Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu and I'm back with another Digimon deck profile video. So today I'm going to be taking a look at RB01, and even though the Resurgence booster doesn't actually give us a whole lot of new tech and tools to be able to work with, it still gives us something, and one of those somethings is going to be the start of a new archetype and a new deck, which is going to be the numemon deck. Or the Monzaemon deck, the new Monzaemon deck, whatever you want to call it. It's basically the secondary poop deck for us to think about utilizing that's acting a little bit different than what the Sukamon deck is already doing. So as far as the overall strategy of the deck, right now it's in an incomplete state, and Numemon and Monzaemon is an incomplete archetype. This means that the strategy isn't exactly 100% there yet, which leaves a lot of room for filler tech, so that way we could use those filler cards to round out the rough edges to support the deck the best that we possibly can. The deck is utilizing both Numemon and Monzaemon names at the center of its archetype. It is a little bit of an unusual deck just because of what it wants to do, where it actually wants to be a control deck to try to stall the opponent out and slow them down as much as you can. The focus on the deck right now is to try to maximize Shinmonzaemon's abilities, just because he is going to be the key boss monster, and he actually has some pretty decent abilities. But as far as the low-level Digimon go, because of Shinmonzaemon's ability, it wants us to try to play a swarm-based strategy to flood the field with them as best as we possibly can, while also having easy access at our level 5s to help with the overall tempo to go into our boss monsters to control the field the best that we can. Right now, the biggest weaknesses to the deck is just a general weakness for a lot of decks, where it's going to be lacking the damage output needed to be able to close out games efficiently. It does have some consistency issues, both with colors and in its archetype, on top of the fact that it lacks any meaningful protection, so it can't defend itself against some of the opponent's potential removal, having a hard time with keeping cards on the field. But once you get past all that, it's a pretty fun and interesting deck, which I'll go over, starting off with the Digi-Eggs. So I am going to be running 5 Digi-Eggs. The whole point of the Digi-Eggs is just to help with the overall consistency. It doesn't really matter which one you're going to be using. I do just like the 4 copies of BT6 Pagumon to try to help dig out our black Digimon when our Digimon gets deleted, but we do have very easy ways to line up the 1 copy of EX4 Sunamon to be able to set up a secondary stack to help us draw additional cards. And then when it comes to the level 3s, as I already stated, we're trying to support what Shinmonzaemon is trying to do as best as we possibly can. So I'm going to be running 8 security rookies. So I'm going to be running 4 copies of the Promodorumon, just because the Promodorumon is actually really good for the deck, because all of our low level Digimon, which is our 3s and our 4s, have a play cost that's less than 4. So off of Dorumon's security ability, we could play any of them out for free when shown. Then I'm going to be running 4 copies of the BT6 Chikurimon just for that de-digivolve, which is going to be pretty annoying for the opponent to be able to disrupt their potential game plan. Then I'm also going to be running 2 copies of the starter deck Chikurimon as just a good generic floodgate for us to use to try to slow down the opponent as best as we possibly can. And Gatsumon I'm going to be running 2 copies of just because he's another decent consistency tool while also being a blocker at the same time. And then when it comes to the level 4s, I'm going to be running a generic Numemon lineup. So I'm going to be running 4 copies of the BT2 Numemon just because of his name, and he actually has pretty efficient stats to be able to climb our stages and set up our higher stages as best as we possibly can. I'm going to be running 4 copies of Jerrymon from BT11 to be able to use our Numemon names to try to help cycle through our deck as best as we possibly can for some added consistency, while also counting as a Numemon himself. Then I'm going to be running 4 copies of the RB01 numemon. This is another searching or digging tool. This time the digging ability is attached to its on delete ability, so whether we're aggressing into the opponent or they're deleting our Digimon, it doesn't matter. He's just helping dig for our Numemon and Monzaemon named cards, while also being a solid inheritable ability for our higher stages to be able to give our Numemon and Monzaemons the blocker ability for added defense. Then when it comes to the level 5s, I'm running another generic lineup of just utilizing Monzaemons. So I'm going to be using 4 copies of Monzaemon from BT5 just because of its name and efficiency in its stat line, but the main level 5 of the deck is going to be the 4 copies of the RB01 Monzaemon, just because we have a whole bunch of different ways on being able to utilize this card. So whether we're hard playing him or digivolving on top of him, it doesn't matter, just because this card can be pretty efficient, just because its on playability allows us to shove a numemon from our trash underneath him to be able to give back to memory, making him on par with Monzaemon if we're just hard playing a level 5. Then whether we're hard playing him or digivolving up into him, it doesn't matter because we still gain that secondary ability where one of the opponent's Digimon gets minus 3000 DP and minus security attack 1 until the end of their turn, so it really is going to try to slow down their potential damage output or control the field depending on what we're hitting. Then its inheritable ability is pretty decent for our Shinmonzaemon to be able to deal some extra damage to put a lot of pressure onto the opponent, thanks to the fact that he's going to be giving him security attack +1. And speaking of our level 6 Digimon, I'm going to be running 3 copies of Shadow Seraphimon as one of the best, if not the best, supporting level 6 that we currently have. So he is playing in both of our colors, so it doesn't matter off of either of our Monzaemons what we're going to be using. We could still easily go up into this card, and because we are actually kind of a control deck, this card is just really annoying for the opponent to deal with. Just because when the opponent is going to be attacking into our security, that's going to trigger the ability where at the opponent's turn, not limited to once per turn, when a card is removed from our security stack, we get a D-Digivolve 1 on one of the opponent's Digimon, really trying to anti-tempo and disrupt their overall gameplay. And then on top of that, if they do end up deleting Shadow Seraphimon, then we get a recover 1, and we even get a nice control ability attached to this to then have one of the opponent's Digimon get minus 4000 DP for each card in our security stack. So the more cards we have in our security stack, the more powerful of a removal ability this card becomes when the opponent is going to eventually try to get rid of this card. And then the main level 6 of the deck and the star of the show is going to be 4 copies of Shinmonzaemon. So Shinmonzaemon is a very interesting card just because his Wind Digivolving ability allows us to place all level 3 Digimon face down at the top of the owner's security stack in any order. This affects not only just the opponent but us as well, so that's why we're running a whole bunch of level 3 security Digimon, so that way if they're just chilling on the field, Shinmonzaemon's going to shove them into our security, making them security threats for the opponent. On top of the fact that we basically just recovered. Then, on top of that, all of the opponent's level 4 and higher Digimon gain a debuff of minus 3000 DP and minus security attack 1, so that way we could try to slow them down and control their field as best as we possibly can, with his secondary ability being one of the better control type of removal abilities that we have access to, where when we attack, we get to trash a card with numemon in its Digivolution source to throw one of the opponent's Digimon face down at the bottom of their security stack, which is really powerful forms of removal just because there's not currently a whole lot of protection against the opponent's Digimon being shoved into their security. Then, as far as Tamers go, you could kind of be flexible with whatever Tamer you feel like you want to run. I'm just going to be running 2 copies of the BT1 TK Takashi as just a good generic memory fixing Tamer. Then, on top of that, he's going to be adding some extra consistency into the deck the best that we possibly can, just because he's allowing us to search our security stack and then take 1 card from it and put it into our hand. And if that card is yellow, then we get to recover 1 and shuffle our security stack, while also giving us access to potential yellow options if we really wanted to. But speaking of options, I'm just going to be running an all-black option lineup, starting off with 2 copies of Final Zubagon Punch. So Final Zubagon Punch is mostly for Shinmonzaemon, just because Shinmonzaemon has a base stat line of 13,000, so that means when this card gives plus 3,000 DP to our Digimon, which is obviously going to want to be Shinmonzaemon, we could reach that 16,000 DP threshold to be able to give him the blocker, reboot, and security attack +1 ability. Then I'm going to be running 3 copies of Ultimate Flare. This is kind of just the tech black removal option and can be, again, whatever you feel like you want to use. I still do value the D-Digivolve 3 and the nuking of any Digimon that costs 3 or less on the opponent's field for some decent control in case we don't have access at Shinmonzaemon right away. Then, as far as the other option I'm going to be running is 4 copies of Pride Memory Boost. Similar to why we're going to be running 4 copies of Dorumon, is this basically has that same style of effect, where we just get to try to play cards off the top of our deck, as long as it's a black Digimon that has a play cost of 4 or less, which all of our level 4 and lower Digimon fit that description. We do have to trash the remaining cards, but it does set itself up for the delay ability to gain 2 memory later to make for some very powerful follow-up plays. And that's kind of it for the main deck. We do have other useful cards that we could think about utilizing depending on how you want to build your version of the deck. So if you wanted to, we do have access to the black starter deck, and we could think about utilizing some of those starter deck cards like Agumon and Tai. Then we do have Chumon as another floodgate. Espimon is another way to potentially increase the consistency and try to draw us cards, especially since Shinmonzaemon can help rig Espimon's effect up. Then we do have the memory boosts. Even though they're not the greatest cards because of the color consistency issue, they're still decent at looking for cards nonetheless, while also helping us gain some extra memory. If you do want to run any level 7, it's probably going to end up being Death Exmon, just because Death Exmon doesn't require us to digivolve up into him in order to make him useful. Then we do have BT6 Izzy and Joe as a decent duo tamer. We could also think about running Nanimon as another security Digimon, even though he won't go into the security with Shinmonzaemon's ability. If we just want more level 4 Digimon, he still kind of does have some decent synergy with the deck, thanks to Jerrymon. Then we do have other tech and utility options, both in black and yellow, but I'm going to be highlighting a couple of black ones like Parabolic Junk and Infinity Cannon. And the cool thing about the deck is that it's also getting support in the known future as of BT14, so you do have something to look forward to upgrade the deck and shift it around depending on how you're actually going to want to end up building the deck. But the fact that it is getting some future support is just nice to know. So that's all I really have for this video. As always, feel free to tell me your thoughts down in the comments below, and down in the description below are a couple of different ways you could support me and the channel. So I do have a TCG Player affiliate link, so when you use that link to buy cards off of TCG Player, then some of that money will go to supporting me and the channel. I also do make and sell playmats over on Overcard Gamers on Facebook, so when you buy a playmat with my design, then some of that money will also go to help supporting me and the channel. And on top of all of that, I do have a Twitch account over on twitch.tv/Zenitsu, so giving me a follow and a subscription also helps support me there, and I do play Digimon on top of various other games on that platform as well. So thank you everyone for watching, and as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content, and I'll see you in the next video.